And we are in chapter 4. We're going to start in verse 10. And we're live all over the world right now. I saw people from El Paso when I was in my office. And it looks like the Cowboys actually won a game this year. So good on you guys over there in Texas. And wherever you're at in the world, I'm glad you're here to study God's Word with us. We're coming to you from beautiful, sunny Southern California. We're in 1 Samuel 4, verse 10. So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated. And they fled, every man to his home. And there was a very great slaughter, for 30,000 foot soldiers of Israel fell. And the ark of God was captured. And the two sons of Eli, so Eli is the priest of Israel, and Hophni and Phinehas are his two sons, they died. A man of Benjamin ran from the battle line and came to Shiloh the same day with his clothes torn and with dirt on his head. And when he arrived, Eli was sitting on his seat by the road, watching, for his heart trembled for the ark of God. And when the man came into the city and told the news, all the city cried out. And when Eli heard the sound of the outcry, he said, "What is this uproar?" Then the man hurried and came and told Eli. Now Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were set so that he could not see. And the man said to Eli, "I am he who has come from the battle. I fled from the battle today." And he said, "How did it go, my son?" He who brought the news answered and said, "Israel has fled before the Philistines, and there has been a great defeat among the people. Your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God has been captured." As soon as he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell over backward from his seat by the side of the gate, and he broke his neck and died. For the man was old and heavy, and he had judged Israel for 40 years. Now his daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant, about to give birth. And when she heard the news that the ark of God was captured and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed and gave birth, for her pains came upon her. And about the time of her death, the women attending her said, "Do not be afraid, for you have borne a son." But she did not answer or pay attention. And she named the child Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel," because the ark of God had been captured and because of her father-in-law and her husband. And she said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured." When the Philistines captured the ark of God, they brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then the Philistines took the ark of God and set it up in the house of Dagon, right beside their god Dagon. And when the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, behold, Dagon had fallen face downward on the ground before the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and put him back in his place. But when they rose early the next morning, behold, Dagon had fallen down faceward on the ground before the ark of the Lord. And the head of Dagon and both his hands were lying, cut off on the threshold. Only the trunk of Dagon was left. This is why the priests of Dagon who enter the house of Dagon do not tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod to this day. And the hand of the Lord was heavy against the people of Ashdod, and he terrified and afflicted them with tumors, both Ashdod and its territory. And when the men of Ashdod saw how these things were, they said, "The ark of the God of Israel must not remain with us, for his hand is hard against us and against Dagon our God." So they sent and gathered all the lords of the Philistines and said, "What shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel?" And they answered, "Let the ark of the God of Israel be brought to Gath." So they brought the ark of God of Israel there. But after they had brought it around, the hand of the Lord was against that city, causing a very great panic, and he afflicted the men of the city, both young and old, so that tumors broke out on them. So they sent the ark of the God to Ekron. But as soon as the ark of God came to Ekron, the people of Ekron cried out, "They brought the ark of God of Israel here to kill us and our people." And they sent therefore and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and said, "Send away the ark of the God of Israel, and let it return to its own place," circle own place, "that it may not kill us and our people." For there was a deathly panic throughout the whole city. The hand of God was heavy there, and the men who did not die with tumors, were struck with tumors, and this cry of the city went up to heaven. If I was to ask you, how would you know your God right now is real? Many times you'll see that on like a podcast or a talk show or whatever, and people go, "Well, this God might be real, this God might be real," or "There's no gods that are real. It's all just kind of made up, like it's all just people's, mythical thoughts that they've had." If I was going to ask you how you know if you're connected to God, your God is real. And then beyond that, if you were going to walk in the ways of God, how would you know that the way you're going will be blessed by that God? So I'm going to walk with you in your walk with God today. So if you got your notes, pull them out. They should be inside your bulletin if you came on campus. If you're online with us, below the video on YouTube is a description area. You'll see a link in there. Click on that link and my notes will come up. Number one is this: God isn't mocked by his people. God isn't mocked by his people. So one thing I'm going to walk into one of the most bizarre realities of God in my view. Like I don't know why God does this. Because humans, like if you have a company and your company's not doing very well, or you got some really bad employees or whatever, but the company itself is pretty solid. Like you as a business owner, you're like, my company's legit. Like my restaurant, awesome. We serve good food, blah, blah, blah. But I got a couple waitresses that are a little, And so you see on your Yelp reviews like, oh, we love this restaurant, but Griselda was horrible or whatever. And like, you're like, but the whole restaurant isn't the waitress. Like, our atmosphere is great, the food's great, we're not very expensive. Like, you as the business owner can name 28 things about why your place is so awesome. However, it's the representation of your business that actually matters. So, what's odd about God is that you would think God would go, I am the ever-living, all-powerful, perfect God. I never make a mistake. I don't sin against anybody. I am God. You would think he would go, when his people, when his Christians or believers in him screw up, you think he'd go, we're just going to hide that. When the pastors are sleeping with, somebody that's not his wife, that's going to make us look bad. Let's just hide that. Let's put it behind the curtain. Kind of like the Wizard of Oz. Don't look behind the curtain. Like some priest molests some kids, and we gotta, let's not deal with that. Let's just kind of hide everything. Just stuff it under the carpet or whatever. You would think God would go, I don't want to look bad for these losers. Why are people blaspheming me because of the losers that are down here on earth? You would think God would go, hey, I am who I am, that these people don't represent me. But God doesn't. You know what's weird about God? Is God cleans the house and he lets all the garbage come vomiting out in public. And so people look at that and they go, oh, God must not be real, or God is, not powerful enough to handle his own people, or whatever. It's wild. And I don't know why God does that, but let's take a walk into one of the most bizarre realities of God and how it affects our own lives. The ark traveled with Israel for 40 years in the desert. This is the Ark of the Covenant, not the Ark of Noah. That was a different ark. That carried animals. This is way smaller in a gold box. So if you're confused about what arks this isn't the same ark. Ark just means a box. Like Noah's ark was a massive box. This one's much smaller. The ark traveled with Israel for 40 years in the desert and rested at Shiloh in Canaan, which is modern-day Israel today, the Promised Land. God promised to drive out their enemies, but the Israelites left the Philistine people group along the Mediterranean Sea. They didn't drive them out, left them there. From Israel's disobedience for not driving them out, the Philistines would be a thorn in the side of Israel for hundreds of years. Here we go. We're going to start off with a bomb. Number one is this: short-term disobedience can lead to long-term consequences. Look at it with your eyes. Short-term disobedience can lead to long-term consequences. Here we go. If you are a middle schooler in here, listen up. If you are ancient and close to seeing Jesus, let's rewind back to, if you can remember your middle school years, 9, 10, 11, 12-ish. Let's rewind back there for a second. Here's the reason why. Many of us made decisions in middle school or high school that still affect us today. Let's think about you and me sitting at home with some of our first major decisions. Having sex with someone. Should I take my clothes off? Should I send this picture? Should I send this text? And those of us that phones weren't even around back then, should I take the phone off the wall and go outside and have a conversation? Anybody remember those janky phone lines? If you're too young to look it up, your phone used to be connected to your wall, son. But think about this. Some of us took our very first drink of alcohol as a middle schooler, high schooler. And now today, we struggle with alcohol, still, decades later. Some of us took our very first toke off a joint when we were in middle school. Like, I don't know, I just kind of want to be high. I want to see what it was like or whatever. Imagine if you could rewind back there, and now to this day, you still struggle with being a pothead, or you still struggle with stealing because you started stealing from mom and dad when you were in middle school, or whatever. Like, let's rewind back to here and go, what if in those moments you're sitting in your room or you're out with your friends or wherever you were, if you could choose wisdom in that moment? I'm not saying you would have chosen perfectly. I'm just saying, let's just pretend for a moment that every decision you made had wisdom, had God's wisdom in it. I'm not going to have sex with this guy. I'm not going to do this sexual thing with this girl. I'm not going to steal from my parents. I'm not going to drink. I don't have to drink. Why am I going to drink? Why am I going to get high? That's stupid. What's the point of that? Imagine if you could have said no to those things. The short-term things of just getting high or doing this thing or whatever it is, all of a sudden, it's now decades away from that moment because the short-term choices we make often have long-term consequences. The person you slept with in the high school, some of us, our kids are still with us. And your 10th grade girlfriend goes, I think I'm preggo. And then your kid is now here today. Not that it's bad that you're here, but just think about this. Maybe it would have been better if you would have come along a little bit later in the relational chain, like as a stable, awesome marriage or something like that. The point I'm making is this. Many times we have short-term decisions that give us long-term consequences. And the wisdom of God is to say, I choose what God wants. Whether I'm 10 or I'm 50 or I'm 85, I always choose what God wants. Even if it goes against my flesh, what my flesh wants, I choose what God wants. Why? Because I know that that's a pathway of God's blessing. And Israel today in this story is going to make a short-term decision that's going to have long-term consequences. And here it is. During a battle with the Philistines, 4,000 men die. So Israel calls for Hophni and Phinehas, the priests, who don't even believe in God. These are priests that don't even believe in the God of Israel. Imagine having a pastor that doesn't even believe in God. That's who these guys were. They asked Hophni and Phinehas to bring the ark 22 miles from Shiloh as a good luck charm. Not inquiring if God wants them to do it, the Philistines defeat Israel and kill 30,000 men, like a small city, including Hophni and Phinehas. So Hophni and Phinehas die on the battlefield. The Philistines capture the ark and they put it in the temple of Dagon at Ashdod. And here's our principle. God is not an add-on to our lives, but is life itself. Hey, one of the poisons of American Christianity is this. We ask this question, what can God do for me? I'll give you my time or my attention or my money if you tell me what you're going to do for me. Because we as Americans especially live in this weird spiritual toxic reality where it's like, if God is a benefit to me, I'll consider giving him my attention. But honestly, if you're not going to do anything for me, why in the world am I going to do anything for you? I'm not going to give you any money. It's my money. I'm not going to give you my attention. I got better things to do with my time than show up and talk to some God that may or may not even exist. Let me help clarify this in your mind. God is God, you are not. God is the creator, you are a creation. And it isn't God who fits into our schedule, it's us that aligns with him. And because of God's power and sovereignty over creation, we, the created, give him glory and honor and thanks. It isn't God who needs to fit into our world. It's us living in his world and aligning with him and his will. Because when you get that straight, your life now becomes organized and it becomes clear about what God has for you rather than living apart from God going, if God doesn't fit into my world, I don't really need him. I don't really want him. Things are going pretty good the way they are right now. Listen to me. Look in my eyes. The only reason life is remotely good is because God is gracious. Don't get it twisted like, man, I did all this stuff myself. You didn't do jack. God is the one who gave you all good things. He lets you have a job. He lets you have those finances. He lets you have those great relationships. He's the one who lets you have all of these things, even if you don't even believe in him. Even if you're an atheist, God still loves you and gives you great things because he's an awesome God. But don't get it twisted thinking I can continue to live away from God and have my life go well. Because the short-term decisions I make will have long-term consequences. And when I choose against God, you don't want God against you. And that's what happens when we continually make choices against God. Israel's going to do that here. God isn't an app on your phone. We treat God like, oh my gosh, Jesus. You know what? I could use a little Jesus. I'm going to go on the app store, and he's only 99 cents. Oh my gosh. I hope this app makes my life easier and better. And then you download the Jesus app and you like play around with it for a little bit. You're like, it's okay. I mean, it's okay. It's not, honestly, after a week, I'm not super impressed. Things haven't gotten that much better. I don't really know if Jesus is really working out. And my phone, because it's like a Nokia flip phone from like 1997, doesn't have much data and memory in it. So I need to get rid of some apps. And I haven't really felt like Jesus is working out. So like when you press like the screen and all your apps start to vibrate. And there's like a little X on top like, don't delete me. And you're like, Jesus, I delete thee. Because you're not working out. And I need to free up some space. Listen to me. Jesus isn't an app that he's not something you just add on to your life and go, I hope it works out. He is your life. The only reason you exist is because God is real and good. So get your mind straight and you'll get your life straight. And the very first step you got to step into is God is God and I am not. What does God want? Not what do I want from God? Because that is the first step of humility to go, God, what do you want from me? I am your creation. You're my creator. I believe you love me. I believe you want good things for me. What are those things? Let me walk in your ways. Here's a map of where this took place. So we will probably go to some of these places when we go to Israel again, maybe next year, if you're going to come on a teaching tour with me. So the Mediterranean Sea over there is where the Philistines were. They were a seagoing people. They controlled a lot of metal work. And so Israel, who's inland, didn't get rid of the Philistines when they came into land. So they've been just a problem for them. So the Philistines, who control the water now, Israel has a problem with shipping. They have a problem with stuff going in and out of their ports. So the Philistines want to start moving inland. So they meet at Ebenezer or Aphek up there. And Shiloh is in the middle of Israel. And so Shiloh is the place where people come to worship God. We saw that with the parents of Samuel a few weeks ago, and they came to worship there, and they met Eli. And so now Eli and Hophni and Phinehas are the priests in Shiloh. They go to battle in Aphek, Ebenezer area. They lose 4,000 men. And so they go, what's going on? I thought God was going to be with us everywhere we go. Why are guys dying? Like, we have the true God. God just smoked all the gods of Egypt. When Moses came out there, those gods aren't even real. Ra and everybody else, like nobody could stop anyone from leaving Egypt. So we know we have the true God. We came into Canaan, all the gods of Canaan, Baal, everybody else, they couldn't stop us. But all of a sudden we run into this little battle with the Philistines, and all of a sudden people are dying. They're like, oh, you know what the problem is? We didn't bring the app. We started using the phone without the app. That's the problem. Go get the ark. We need our good luck foot. Our little rabbit's foot that we can hang from the rearview mirror. That's a problem. You know, you're right. Tell Hophni and Phinehas to go bring it. So they run 22 miles back to Shiloh. They bring the ark all the way to Aphek. And you know then what happens? 30,000 men die. And now they're like, what is going on? We got the ark. Everybody's dying. We know he's the true God. What is going on? Here's what Ashdod looks like. You can visit it today. Actually, put the map back up there just to give you a point of reference. The Gaza Strip, where the war's going on right now currently, is at the bottom left corner of this map, below Ashdod. So where that war is going on. And you know, it's also interesting. Palestine never used to be called Palestine until about 100 years after Rome came in. And they renamed it because they didn't want Israel to have a connection to that land. So you know why they named it Palestine? Is because the number one enemy of Israel was the Philistines. That's why it's called Palestine to this day, if you didn't know that. So here's actually Ashdod. You can go visit it. You can walk through it. These are ruins of the Philistine time there 3,000 years ago. And somewhere in this area would have been a temple to Dagon. And this is what a typical temple looked like 3,000 years ago. So this is the temple of Baal in Syria, which still stands, 3,000-year-old temple. So think about this temple being where Dagon is set up inside of there. Philistines come back from victory. They're hauling the ark with them, and they set it inside this temple at the feet of Dagon, their god, assuming that Dagon is real and the God of Israel is either non-existent or really inept. Hearing his sons are dead, and the ark has been captured as prophesied by Samuel, Eli falls and breaks his neck. His daughter-in-law then dies giving birth all on the same day. So this is the prophecy that Samuel gave a couple weeks ago in our study, and now it's all come true. Imagine God wipes out this whole family line because nobody wants to follow God. Eli and Hophni are priests that don't even believe in the true God, and so Eli, the dad, doesn't remove them, so now God removes the whole line. And even a daughter-in-law dies as well. Now you're going to see Samuel be raised up by God to do God work in the next couple weeks here. A shocking reality is that God would rather look bad than let his people act bad. God would rather vomit up hypocrisy than live without integrity. Wow. You know what's crazy? Is that God would rather expose sin publicly than have sin covered to make himself look better. Because oftentimes I've wondered why, dude, God, why do you let all these pastors and all this stuff, like our culture, like when you invite somebody to church, you go, hey, come to the orchard. We got free donuts. It's amazing. And people are like, no, man, I already tried that. Or, the pastors are all hypocrites, or people are all hypocrites, or blah, 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 whatever. Like everybody makes an excuse about something. It's like, but you've never even been there, right? No, I haven't, but they're all the same. You haven't ever met Pastor Jim, right? Nah, but I'm sure he's a hypocrite too. Okay, all right. So you're just being really prejudiced is what you're doing. And the reason that happens though in many of our lives, because many of us were that way, is that we saw hypocrisy in other places, in other people, and we go, well then obviously God's not on the job because he didn't fix this. If God was real, he wouldn't let this happen. And the crazy part is this. God would rather vomit out hypocrisy and just have his name look bad than let it go unchecked. And I appreciate that about God, because that means God has integrity. That means God is holy and God is righteous. And that means it's on me to make sure I'm in alignment with God, because God doesn't let anybody get away with anything. Me, you, anyone. Everyone's held accountable to God. Here's our principle. Humans do not alter the holiness of God, but are instead altered by it. We don't alter the holiness of God. Holiness means separateness, purity, kind of a sacredness, a set apartness. And so think about this. God is purely holy, which means there's nobody like him. In his purity, there's nothing like God. But watch this. When I, as a sinful person, come to Christ, God now goes to work aligning me with his holiness. So there's a part of holiness that has to be given to you. It's from God, like he makes you his child. It's like being born into a family. But there's a part of me that resists holiness, that loves sin, loves my old ways. And so for all of us, even as Christians, you need to pursue holiness. Imagine if you pursued purity as much as you pursued sin. Imagine if you had so much energy, you woke up just in the morning going, God, how can I be perfect? Rather than, God, how can I be sneaky? One of the best steps you can make, holiness is not beyond you. You can do it. Because holiness is a mindset saying, I want God to get glory out of my life rather than what's in it for me. Holiness is just this. God is holy. I want to be like God. What things can I do that shine God into the world? I need to be a better husband. I need to be a better wife. I need to be a better child. I need to be a better parent. You should wake up every morning. The first thought that goes through your mind is, God, how can I be holy and serve you today? And you'll be amazed how God puts that stuff in your head. Stop talking to your mom like that. Stop waving on the freeway with one finger. Instantly, God just goes bam, 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 bam. And it's like, you need to pursue purity. You have to pursue holiness. Israel in this story, they just want God to just do their bidding like a good luck charm. But God's like, I'm not about that life. You need to be about my life. You walk with me, I will bless you. You walk against me, don't think I'm going to get your back when you walk away from me. I'm not somebody you just conjure up to come do some stuff. Which leads us to number 2. God isn't defeated by his enemies. Number 1, God isn't mocked by his people. So pursue purity this week. Gentlemen, pursue purity. Sexually, financially, in the way you talk, in the way you are. Ladies, pursue purity. Sexually, in the way that you talk, how you handle yourself. In everything that you do, pursue purity. Imagine if we all put energy into purity rather than running towards sin. Our whole lives would be different. Our whole valley would be different. Maybe even our whole nation. Number 2, God isn't defeated by his enemies. So this is when God actually does show up. A victorious army would often take the defeated people's gods as a sign of their gods being superior. So the Philistines put the ark at the feet of Dagon, their god of the sea or possibly of grain. And here's our principle. In the absence of the true God, people will fill their spiritual void with whatever they value. It's the reason that you try to fill the void of God, that part of your soul, with something else. If you're a relational person, it could be sexual or just you want to date everybody or whatever. It's like you just don't ever want to be bored. If you're financially driven or whatever, it's like making that next dime, making that next million. I mean, just building that thing. But understand, nothing can fill the God void. Only God fills that. God reserves a part of your soul, so to speak, for himself. And Israel, in this story, tries to fill God with their own drives and desires. So check this out. This is the Ark of the Covenant. You better not touch it. This is exactly the size of the Ark of the Covenant. So I built this thing off of the measurements in the book of Exodus. And here, fun fact, these cherubim are the same exact cherub. They come from the same molds as the cherubim in Raiders of the Lost Ark. So movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, if you see a snapshot of that where they show the Ark of the Covenant and you look at this in a video later, you'll see these exact same ones. I got this off a movie prop site. Anyway, moving on. That was not spiritual and totally didn't even matter. But I say this, ready? This is the Ark of the Covenant. It had the 10 commandments of Moses in it. When Moses died, they still carried this thing around with them wherever they went. God didn't dwell in this box. This wasn't a talisman or a rabbit's foot. God didn't sit inside this box under this cover. However, God's Spirit, though, voluntarily chose to dwell between the cherubim. And when you, at Shiloh, if you were an Israelite, you'd bring your animal, sacrifice the animal, the blood of the animal. Somebody had to die to forgive your sin. An innocent animal had to die so you didn't have to die. So the blood of the animal was sprinkled on what was called the mercy seat. It was the idea that this is the throne of God, and the Spirit of God dwelled here on this mercy seat. And the blood was thrown on here to represent the fact that God's holiness can never be over. You can't step over God's holiness. Something has to die that you might live. So, this was sitting at Shiloh, and they're starting to be defeated by their enemies, and they're like, we better bring the box. The problem is, the box went, but God didn't. Because God isn't manipulated. And so the box shows up, and the 30,000 men die. And then they capture it, the Philistines capture it, and they take it to Dagon. I don't think this is Dagon, I got this from Home Depot. But close enough for my use, okay? So the priests of Dagon go, man, look at that. Oh, your little God in the box wasn't powerful enough? Well, I guess Dagon is, because who won? It's hilarious. They go home and go to bed, and they wake up the next day, and Dagon is on his face before the ark. And they walk in, they go, what? Was there an earthquake last night that I didn't know about? That's really weird. Nothing seemed to have happened to the box. That's weird. And it says, hey, come here, help me put some. A couple of guys push Dagon back up. Sorry, bro. Sorry, I did get your little face. Dust off our God. You okay, buddy? Okay. Well, you got a little boo-boo on your nose. And then they go home. They're like, shoo, Dagon took a digger. Goes home, goes to sleep. They wake up the next day. I love that God's just playing games. God's all about games. And he goes, Dagon's on his face. His arms are snapped off, and his head's off. And imagine Dagon's head's just rolling around out here on the ground. And the priests of Dagon walk in, and they go, whoa, something's whack. Because what would happen is a king, when they defeated another king, is they would cut their hands off, and they would behead them, and they would put their body, and they'd stick it to the side of a city. So everybody passing by goes, we better not mess with the Philistines, because look what just happened to their king. So when they saw this, they go, that God is doing something to our God. And you know what's odd? Is the Philistines don't go, whoa, that must be the true God. Our God took a digger and got his head busted. We better go with the God of Israel. You know what they go? They go, well, we better put this thing back up. Put his arms back on, stick his head back on. Sorry, buddy. I do not know why that God was so hard on you. We're going to have a counseling session with the God of Israel. It's crazy. Your God just proved he doesn't even exist. That God just toyed with your God just for fun. If I'm a Philistine, I go, dude, we need to get with the right God. But here's one of the problems of being a sinful person. Ready? I'd rather live with my lies that I can control than give my heart to the true God that may want something from me that I don't want to give. You know why? Because I love my lies. I know they're probably bad for me. I know it's probably destroying me, but at least I get to control what I do. And in this case, Dagon's not even real. It's just made up like all the other pantheon of gods around the world. But there is a true God. And you know the reason many people don't run to the true God is because they don't want the true God to mess with their life. And here's the reality. We would rather be wrong and live the way we want than get right with God and do the right thing with our lives. Look at this. The next day, the worshipers find the statue of Dagon lying on its face before the ark. Setting Dagon back up, the next day they find him on his face with his head and his hands broken off, as a conquering king would kill an enemy king. This scares the priests so much they wouldn't walk where Dagon was slain. God often shows amazing restraint and patience in an effort to bring people to repentance. Look at me, I said I'm almost done. Look at me. I said almost. Look at me. God is amazingly patient with me and you. We are the priests of Dagon. As we run after lies, we do things we know God hates. Our conscience says, don't do that anymore, stop doing that. We made decisions back here in middle school that we should be stopping now as adults, but we just continue to do it. It's like there's lies we know in our lives that we just need to stop. We need to cut off. We just need to go, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm done living this life. I need to turn to the true God and be changed. But for many of us, we don't want this life because we know God's going to ask us to change. And because we're rebellious and hard-headed, we'd rather live a lie. But God is so patient. I think he did this whole little story to tell the Philistines, you need to become an Israelite. Get with the right team. Many of us are living lives of lies. But God is so patient and so loving and so good. He doesn't give up on us. He still goes, hey, I showed you how inept that life is. Let's stop doing that. Hey, let's live true life. Come to Jesus. Come to God. Live a life that's holy and righteous and blessed by God. In an effort to stop the curse, they used sympathetic magic by sending gold rats and tumors back to Israel with the ark. Once the ark arrives, it becomes a blessing to God's people again. I close with this. God's presence is a blessing to those who desire his presence. Hey, you know what's awesome? When God shows up, he's against people who are rebellious. If the Philistines would have repented and said, we want to become Israelites, they would have been blessed by God. But they chose to live a lie, and God was against them. But watch, when God shows up to the people of God, God's people rejoice, and God's people are blessed. And my hope for you today, look at me as I'm done. Hey, my hope for you today is whatever lies you're living now, you let go of those. And you chase after the purity of God. Blessing doesn't exist over here. We think it does because we want to bless ourselves. Blessing exists with the God who loves you. So come to God. I don't know how many of you guys have a messy closet at home. Where are my messy closet people here? This service is a disaster. My wife is a clean, neat freak. 5 ladies are still with me. Awesome. My wife, you go into our closet, both of our closets. She has short sleeves on top, long sleeves on the bottom, and it's all color-coded from white to all the other colors. Just all the way through. And then the shoes are just like in a little rack thing and with like a cover on them so they don't get dusty. If I wasn't married, my closet would look like a bomb went off and even God would vomit. Here's the thing. There are many closets we have in our heart that we close the door and go, God, don't go in there. Those are the lies I love. This is the life I love. Don't go in there. I would rather have Dagon and live with a closed closet door. We don't want somebody to go in there and go, we need to clean this thing up. We need to organize your life. This is chaos. Nobody can live in chaos. It's time to get everything right. I will help you as God. God has said, I will help you. But let's go in here. Let's clean your heart up. Because blessing lies where God resides. And if God resides in your heart, then do that heavy lifting of being holy.